Hello students, this program is written to find which day of year a date is. The purpose is as follows. Write a program to take a date as input from the user and find which day of year it is. The user will input the date in the following format only: dts dash mm dash yy. So keep in mind that the input is going to be a string type of data item in the format dt dash mm dash yy. Now we have to find which day of the year this date is. Now, how do we do it? See, look at some examples. If the user has provided the date 01-01-2010, then obviously it is the 1st of January and it is day 1 of the year. Similarly, if the user has provided the date 2-2005, so it is the 2nd of February. Now which day of the year it is? See, January has 31 days, then it is the second day of February. So 31 plus 2, it is the date number 33 of the year. Similarly, if the date given by the user is 30 January 2022, then it is the day number 30 of the year. So this is what we have to calculate. So before you can pause the video here and try to figure out how can it be done. Now before we see the program, we want to discuss some points. See, this program is an extension of the previous program which we discussed in our previous video, in which we check the validity of a date that we have already done. Checking the validity of a date, and that program is modified and extended in this program. Okay, and now the logic of the program is such that consider the date is 15th of August 1947. Now we process this date in the following way in our program. First of all, we check if the date is valid. See, we have already written all the logic for checking the validity of a date, so we will use that functionality here again and check if the date is valid or not. And this also includes checking if the year is a leap year or not. Then we, if the date is found to be an invalid one, we print an error message requesting the user to provide another date. And if the date is valid, we proceed to find the which day of the year this date is. How do we do it? We add full days of all the months before the month in the date. That means, we are considering the date 15/08/1947. What we do is we first of all add all the days of January, February, March, April, May, June and July, because this date falls in the month of August. So we must add all the days preceding the month of August. Okay, so we need to add full days of all the months before the month given in the date. Then what we do, then we add the day given in the date, that is the day is 15. We have to add this 15 also in the sum we calculated in the previous step. When we add this day also in the months prior to the month given in the date, to the months prior given in the date, we get which day of year the date is. Okay, so this is the logic of the program. Now we start discussing the functions used in this program. First of all, we discuss this function is leap year. What this function do? This function takes a year as an argument, which is an integer type data item, and tells whether that year is a leap year or not. How this is done is already discussed in the previous video of checking the validity of a date. we can briefly discuss it here. The logic of this function is this, that the year which is provided as an argument to this function is divided by 400 and its remainder is compared with 0. If it happens to be 0, then this means it is a centenary year like 1800, 2000, 1600, which is divisible by 400. Actually 1600 and 2000 are divisible, 1800 is not divisible. So when a year is divisible by 400, that means it is a centenary year and it is also a leap year. Otherwise, we are using the OR logical operator here. Otherwise, if a year happens to be divisible by 4 and it is also not divisible by 100, then it means it is a non-centenary year, like an ordinary year like 1999, which is divisible by, or 1996, which is divisible by 4, hence it is a leap year. So when one of these two conditions are met, what we do is we create a variable named leap and set the value true with it, and otherwise we store the value false in the leap variable, and finally we return the leap. So when a leap has the value true, it means the year passed as argument to this function is a leap year, otherwise it is not a leap year. Then we move to the second function, which is find day of year. In this function we take 3 arguments: day, month and year. Now we start with a variable day of year. Now what will be the use of this variable? See, ultimately we want to find which day of year a given date is. So this variable is going to be that answer. Okay, it will represent the day of year a particular date happens to be. Okay, we initialize this variable with the value day. What is day? Day is the day part of the date provided by the user. Month is the month part of the date provided by the user, and year is the year part of the date provided by the user. See, as we consider the example of 15 August 1947, then 15 is a day, 08 or just 8 is month, and 1947 is the year. Okay, so in case of 15th August 1947, we are adding value 15 into this variable day of year. Okay, we have already added the days of August to this variable. Now we need to add the days of previous months before the August, okay, which are January to July. We have to add all the days of all these 7 months into this variable day of year. How do we do it? For this, we first create a list by name days underscore 30 which has 4 values: 4, 6, 9, 11. It is clear that 4 stands for April, 6 for June, 9 for September and 11 for November. So these are the 4 months in the year which have 30 days in them. So we have created a list for them named days 30. Next we run this loop for m in range 1, month. Now you should stop for a minute and think what values will the loop variable m be getting from this loop. Loop variable m will be getting the values 1 to month minus 1. Now again consider the date 15/08/1947. Since the value of month is 08 for this date, the value of m is going to be 1 to 7, because a month is the stopping value for this range function here. So we are going to get 1 to 7 values in this loop, in the loop variable m. Okay, now what we do, that means we will be able to process all the months before the 8th month of the year in this loop. So what we do with the values of m? If the value of m happens to be 2, which means we are processing the February month, then we wish to add either 29 or 28. Now when do we add 29? We add 29 if the year happens to be a leap year, which we check with the function is leap year, which we have just discussed before this function. And if that function returns true, that means it is a leap year, and we add 29 to the variable day of year. Otherwise we add 28 to the variable day of year. So, okay, so this is the case of the February month. All this we just discussed is belongs to the month of February only, okay, to this condition. But if this is not true, that means we are dealing with a month which is not February, then we move to the alif part of this condition. In the alif part, we check if M is a part of these 4 months. That means we are checking whether M is one of these 4 values, 4, 6, 9, 11. If M happens to be one of these 4 months, that means it has 30 days in it, and in that case we just add 30 to this variable day of year, okay. Otherwise we are left with only the case of months which have 31 days in them, and we add 31 to this variable day of year. So this way we process all the values of M from 1 to 7, and we check for every value of M which type of month it is, whether it is February, or it is a 30-day month, or it is a 31-day month, and do accordingly add the proper number of days to this variable day of year. So after this loop ends, our variable day of year will be having the answer to our original problem, that which day of the year our given date is. So we return this value day of year here. So this ends this function, find a day of year. Next, what we need to see is the month is Feb date valid. See, this function is used to check whether or not a date of February is valid or not, okay. So what we do, we have already discussed this part in the previous video. We again discuss it briefly. What we do here is just that we again use the variable if is leap year. This function we just discussed some minutes ago is leap year, and pass the variable year. See, this variable is taking 2 arguments, day and year, okay. Month is already known because we are dealing with the February month, so month is known. We are taking day and year as argument, and what we do is to call this is leap year function with the value year, and that function tells us whether or not this year is leap, okay. So if it happens to be leap, the variable leap will be storing the value true, else it will be having the value false. And what we do here, that if leap happens to be true, then we ensure that the day part of the date must be less than or equal to 29. In that case we say it is a valid date, otherwise we say it is not a valid date, and we return false. And if that happens to be false, that means the year is not a leap year, then we move to the alif part, and we ensure that the day must be less than or equal to 28, because a year which is not a leap year, February, does not contain more than 28 days. So if the day happens to be less than or equal to 28, we return the message true, that means the date is valid. Otherwise we return false, which means the date is not valid. After this function, we come to another helping function, which is get day, month, year. Now look at this function. What this does is it takes a date argument, which is a string type argument, okay. Date is a string type argument which is input by the user in the format dt-mm-yy. What this function does is that it extracts day, month and year from this date string using slices. See, when we write a date like 15/08/1947, then we are sure that this string is going to have index 0 for value for character 1, index 1 for character 5, index 2 for the dash character, and so on. We are going to use slices on these indexes. Okay, so when we write a day 0:2, that means we are going to get the first two characters 1 and 5. Okay, and we are using the int function on this 1 5 character string that gives us the value 15. So our variable day gets the value integer 15 because we have applied int function on the slice. And similarly, when we apply the slice 3 to 5, we get 08. Okay, the string 08 we get by the slice, and again we apply int function on that, and our month variable gets the value 8. Okay, and then finally we use the slice 6 colon which gives the 1947 part of the date, and again we apply the int function on it, and our year variable gets the value 1947 as a number. Okay, and we return the values day, month, year from this function. We return the values day, month, year in the function. Now you should note that we are returning day, month, and year. We are returning 3 values from a function. See, in Python it is valid to return more than 1 values. In the example programs discussed so far, we have seen functions which return typically 1 value, but this function is returning 3 values, and it is completely valid. And we will see that when this function is actually called, we will be storing these 3 values in 3 variables in the main program. Next we see the isDateValid function, which takes day, month, year, 3 integer values as arguments. Okay, what we do is again we create a days underscore 30 list which represents the April, June, September, and November months of the year. And next we check if day is greater than 31 or month is greater than 12, then obviously the date is invalid, and we return false. This function does the job of telling whether or not a date is valid. It handles any date including February. Actually, this is the function which is going to call that February function we just discussed previously. Okay, so first of all, it checks whether the day is greater than 31 or the month is greater than 12, in which case the date is clearly invalid, and this function returns false from here. Okay, otherwise it checks if the month happens to be 2. That means if the month part of the date is 2, that means it is a February, then it calls the isFabDateValid function which we discussed a little while ago, and tells whatever and returns whatever is written by that function. If that function says the February date provided is valid, then it returns true, and if the date is told to be invalid, it returns false. If that is also not the case, that means the month does not happen to be February also, then we check whether if the month is a days 30 month, that is the value of month is in this list. If it is so, that that means, and with that if day happens to be 30, that means the month is one of those months which have only 30 days, but the day given by the user is greater than 30, that means the date is invalid, and we return false. But otherwise it clearly means that the date given by the user is valid, and we return true. So this is the working of this isDateValid function. Now we come to the main program. In the main program, we first of all take the date from the user as input in the format dd-mm-yy. Again, note that we have only used the input function. We have not used the int function with input, because we are not taking a number as input, we are taking a string as input. And then we extract the day, month, and year parts from this string date provided by the user using the function getDayMonthYear. And as we saw this function returns three integer values, which we store in three variables named day, month, year. Now, as you can see, we are using the same variable names day, month, year in the main program as we used in this function get day, month, year. See, here is your get day, month, year function, and we are using the same variable names day, month, and year. See, as you can see that we are using the same variable names day, month, and year in this function as we used in the main program. How is it allowed that we can use the same variable names in the two parts of the program? See, it is completely valid because the function get day, month, year has a different scopes from the scope of the main program. Okay, and the variables in the different scopes can have the same identifiers without causing any clash of identifier names, and they are completely different identifiers. They don't know anything about each other, so it is completely okay to use the same identifiers because the scopes of the two parts of the program here are different. And you should also remember that this date variable, which is the argument which we pass to this function, is also a variable of this scope. The scope of this get day, month, year function. Okay, this belongs to this function. Just like day, month, and year variables belong to this function, this date variable also belongs to this function. Then what we do, we have extracted the day, month, and year parts in this line of the main program. Next, what we do is that we check the validity of the date. Is date valid function is called now with three arguments day, month, and year, and if that function returns a value true, then it's okay. Otherwise, if it does not return a value, then we print the message and the date is invalid, please try again. Otherwise means when this function returns true, that means the date is valid. Then what we do is we call the find day of year function with the same three arguments, and this is whatever value is written by that function is sent to the print function, which prints it on the screen. That's all about this program. Thank you very much.